Hey guys, Rick Stone here from Our Stoney Acres. Welcome to our YouTube channel. Super excited to have you guys here today because we are going to be talking about gardening zones, what they are, how we can use them, how you can figure out what your garden zone is. So make sure you stay tuned for that. Before we get started though, please make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel. Click that notification bell so you get noticed every time I release new videos, and please make sure you go over and follow us on Instagram as well. I'm doing a lot of fun things, trying to jump in every day and do something out in the garden over on Instagram in the stories, and so I would love to have you come and join us there as well. And so there's a link down in the description you can click to follow us on Instagram. Okay, so I get a lot of questions about gardening zones. Anytime I mention a garden zone in any of my videos, I constantly have a list of questions. How do I figure out what my garden zone is? What are gardening zones? And I know that a lot of people that are new to gardening don't really understand that. And especially some people that don't live in North America, their garden zones may not be as used as much either. And so today I wanted to take just a few minutes and kind of go through and explain to you the garden zone system, how it works, how it kind of isn't perfect, and sometimes I get criticized. I'm guilty of depending on garden zones a little bit too much sometimes in my videos, just like a lot of other YouTubers are. But I want to kind of explain how they work and some of the limitations so that hopefully you guys understand what a garden zone is, and how to figure out your garden zone and how you can use that to help you with your planting and your winter gardening and things like that. Okay, so let's get started. Most countries across the world have gone through and divided their country up regionally into gardening zones. Okay, and here in the United States and in Canada, those zones are based on the minimum average wintertime cold temperature. Okay, so they're really determined. What zone you live in determines on how cold it gets in your winter garden. And so there's kind of where some of the limitations come in, because it doesn't talk about similarities and things like that. It's really just designed to be that minimum cold temperature. Okay, but if you tell me that you live in a zone 6 garden, I'm going to know quite a bit about your garden already. Okay, I'm going to know roughly your planting dates. I'm going to know what your winters are like. I'm going to have some pretty good ideas. And so the garden zones actually do turn out to be fairly useful in gardening. And I always, the first question I ask somebody when they ask me a question is, what zone do you live in? Because if you live in zone 3, I'm going to be giving you different advice than if you live in zone 8. Based on the question that you're asking. So there are some uses to it, and the systems have been criticized, and I will admit that sometimes we rely a little bit too heavily on the zone. What zone do you live in? But again, there are a lot of general things that we can learn about somebody's garden. So let's talk a little bit about that minimum temperature again. Basically, the hardiness zones were established so that we would know what type of plants we can grow. Okay, so let's use an orange tree for an example, because this is a pretty dramatic example. Okay, orange trees are only hardy in zones 9, 10, and 11. Okay, so that's where we can grow them. You can't grow orange trees in zone 6. So if you want to grow an orange tree and you look up and find out that you live in zone 5, you can't grow an orange tree outside in your garden. Okay, so that's kind of a dramatic example, but that's what we do. And most plants will tell you that they're hardy to zone 5 or to zone 3 or to zone 7, or whatever it is. And so we can use them to help us determine what plants we can actually get in our garden and that they'll actually survive our wintertime temperatures. Okay, because a lot of plants don't like cold, other plants don't like hot. And so we need to know what zones our plants are hardy for. Okay, so that's one of the useful things that we can use. So the other thing, again, is that kind of comparison. I know that if I live in a zone 6 and you live in a zone 6, our gardens are going to be fairly similar. Similar frost dates, similar winter conditions and things like that. And so I'll be able to give you some advice based on what garden zone you live in. Okay, so let's talk about some of the general things that we know about gardening zones. Okay, first off, in the continental United States and Canada, we have zones ranging from zone 1 to zone 13, okay? Zone 1 being the coldest, zone 13 being the warmest, okay? But the bulk of the population of both the United States and Canada live in zones 3 through 10. Okay, now I just totally offended some people because I recognize that there are a few of you that live in zones 1 and 2, and there are a few of you that live in the really warmer spots. But ultimately, within the continental United States and Canada, the bulk of the population lives in zones 3 through 10. Okay, and generally, the warmer zones are south and the colder zones are north. So if you look at the maps, we start with zones 10 and 11 way down in Florida, Southern California, Southern Arizona, the southern part of Texas. Those are the zones 10, and then we go zones 9 and 8 and 7 and 6 and 5 and 4 and 3 all the way up into Canada, okay? But there's a little bit of a thing that kind of foils us on that, and that's the Pacific Ocean, okay? The Atlantic Ocean is colder, and so it doesn't affect the garden zones nearly as much, but the Pacific Ocean actually gives us a strip of zones 9 and 8 and 7 all the way up into British Columbia, Canada, okay? And like Seattle, Washington, and all of those areas are actually zones, 8 or 9, okay, like that. And so there's kind of this strip that goes up along the Pacific Ocean and then down the coast of those warmer zones as well. And then that also kind of edges like the zone 7s and the zone 6s a little bit further north where you're against the Pacific Ocean as well. Okay, so that kind of throws a little wrench in the whole thing, because when we start talking about like zones 8, 9, and 10, a zone 9 southern Texas is way different than a zone 9 Washington state, okay, because of latitude. So latitude will often affect that a little bit. And so zones 8 and 9, the ones that are kind of along the Pacific coast, are a little bit trickier, okay? Your minimum winter temperatures are the same as they are in Texas, but your winter conditions are drastically different because of your latitude, okay? So it kind of falls apart a little bit there. The gardening zones kind of go up in scale every 10 degrees, and here about, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, they kind of subcategorized them. So it used to just be that we had 13 categories, 1 through 13. Now they have a 1A and a 1B and a 2A and a 2B, and so we actually have 26 total zones that you can live in. But really a zone 7A and a zone 7B are pretty similar, other than that a 7A is just a little bit colder in the wintertime than a 7B. And they're broken down by 10-degree jumps in their minimum cold temperature in the wintertime. So hopefully that gives you a little bit better understanding of how the garden zones work, and what we're going to do to use them in our gardens, okay? Now let's talk about how you can figure out where to find your garden zone, okay? So both the USDA and the Canadian government publish garden zone maps on their websites. And what I've done is I've included, I have a post that I wrote on my website that includes links out to all the different governmental agencies that will give you your garden zone. So there's one to the Canada one, there's one to the USDA, there's also one that will help you if you live in Europe, and will help you kind of convert those as well. So click on the link, it's down in the description of this video. You can click on that and that will take you to my website, and then you can choose your government agency and go out and figure out your garden zone from there. And usually on those websites you just put in your postal code and it will tell you what garden zone you are, okay? So for example, I am garden zone 6B. And so there's some other things that you can use that you should know about your garden that will help you to augment the zone system and kind of make that applicable. And the first and most important thing is your frost dates, okay? Both your first frost in the fall and your last frost in the spring. You need to find those out. And that's a little bit harder to find online. There are a couple of websites. One is called Morning Chores. The other is called the Old Gardener's Almanac. Both of those have frost calculators where it will tell you what your frost dates are. But I'm not terribly impressed with those dates. They totally missed it on my garden zone. They were off by like 3 weeks. So use those as kind of a beginning point, but the thing that I would recommend is that you call your local extension agency. So there's going to be some type of governmental agency that has to do with agriculture, gardening, and stuff like that in your area. Call them and ask an expert, okay? Ask somebody, I live in such and such a town, when is my first frost and when is my last frost? And that is going to help you a ton when it comes to planting, because we're always talking about you should be planting 4 to 6 weeks before your first frost, or you should be planting on your frost date. So knowing that will help to really augment your garden zones and knowing what your garden zone is. So I really do think that garden zones are helpful. They are definitely not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but they are a good way for us to kind of get a good general understanding of gardening conditions. And so when I say this video is for garden zones 5 through 7, you should have a pretty good idea of what I'm talking about. So go figure out what your garden zone is, figure out what your frost dates are, and that is going to help you to become a much better gardener. Okay, that, my friends, is all that I have for you for this week. Hopefully you enjoyed this video and found it helpful. Please make sure that you subscribe to my YouTube channel and also jump over on Instagram and follow us there. We do a lot of fun stuff daily on that channel, and so I would love to have you follow us there as well. Okay, thanks. Everybody have a great week. Happy gardening. Hey guys, I just want to say thank you for watching this YouTube video. Hopefully you enjoyed it and got a lot of good information out of it. How was your garden this year? Did you struggle a little bit? Did you have some problems? Were you new to gardening? Are you just now thinking about starting a garden? Well, I want to help you. And the best way that I can help you to become a better gardener is to have you join the Gardening Academy. So the Gardening Academy is our monthly membership service where we provide weekly content to help you become a better gardener. And now is a great time to join because we've been going for over a year, which means the site is loaded with tons of great gardening content. On top of all of the content that's there, we also have a monthly Q&A session where you guys can ask me questions, and it's just a great place to be and a great place to learn about gardening. There's a link down in the description below. You can click on that. It'll teach you more about it, and I would really love to have you be a part of the Gardening Academy. So please join. Click the link below. Thanks, guys. Happy gardening.